Hello, today we're going to be taking a look at two Phillips headphones today. So we have the Phillips SHP9500s and the Phillips Fidelio M1MKIIs. So let's go ahead and talk about the M1s first, since I do have the box for that. Well, the other headphones I'm borrowing from my brother for the day. So here's the box. That's what that looks like. And inside the box, you get this, which opens up. And inside of here, you get a carry bag. So you can fold those headphones flat and put them in that bag. And the only other thing that's in this box is a manual. And then the headphones would also be in the box, sitting in this plastic piece. So let's go ahead and talk about the cable first. The cable is detachable, and it's about only 4 feet long. So it's made for portable use. And I'm not sure if you can see this, but you can see the cable plugs into this right here. So this part is not detachable. That's connected to it. So it's a little different than what you're probably used to seeing. And you just connect it like that. Now, as you notice, the headphones do fold flat, but the left side is, according to the indicator here and here, that would be the left side. And when I take them off my head, and let's say if I wanted to set them down, they fold flat the wrong way. So you kind of have to turn them around to set them down. So I want to mention that. So let's go ahead and talk about the build. I believe this is metal. The grill here is metal. I read the manual. I believe they say it's genuine leather, so I guess it's real leather. And the pads are real leather. And they also have some type of fabric here that's not really itchy, maybe just a tiny bit itchy. And that's about it to the build. So the build is very good. And let's talk about the headband adjustment. You can move it all the way up like that. And if I put it on my head, you can see that there's only a little bit of room on top of my head. And on each side, you get these lines with numbers, so you can adjust it to match each side. So let's say if I move it down to like a number 3. And you also can see that this adjustment is very solid, and I like it a lot. So let's go ahead and talk about the comfort now. Now you'll notice that these are on ear and not over ear. And the ear pads have quite a bit of clamp. It is kind of tight. So after about an hour, they start to hurt my ears. So they're not very comfortable. The headband, about after an hour to 2 hours, it starts to hurt as well. It just doesn't have enough padding up here. So these headphones are not really comfortable. They're probably my least favorite when it comes to comfort. So let's go ahead and talk about the other headphones now. By the way, the other headphones, they had a braided cable. This does not have a braided cable. The cable is detachable, and it's a little longer. It's about 5-6 feet long. And in terms of build, this might be plastic. I don't think this is metal, but the adjustment on the headband is metal, and this top part is like a rubber plastic. So the build is a little on the cheaper side, but it's well constructed. So you can see, you can move the headband all the way up like that, and you can see there's a little more room on the top of my head. So if you have a really big head, these will fit for you. And if you notice on the headband adjustment, it also has lines and numbers and a little circle right here. So let's say if I move that circle to a 1, like that. That's about how much I would need. So I just do that on both sides to make sure both sides are even. And you get left and right indicators right here and right here. So let's go ahead and talk about the comfort. which, by the way, this is memory foam, the headband, and it's not a velour, but it's some type of different, it's like some type of fabric material. It's not crunchy sounding, so when you put it on, you don't hear any crunching, so that's good. The ear pad's the same thing. You don't hear any crunch, and they are memory foam. And the inside has some type of like fuzzy cloth on the inside. So let's go ahead and talk about the comfort. These are over ear, so they do wrap around your ear. The inside does touch my ear a little bit, like right over here. So the inside does touch your ear, but it doesn't bother me. And in terms of comfort, this is probably the best headband I have ever tried. It's very comfortable. I could wear it pretty much all day. And these are, and since these are a little more on the plastic side, they are pretty darn light. So that's what helps, makes the headband pretty comfortable. These are, the other ones, maybe just a tiny bit heavier. And it's probably because they're made of metal. Since these are a little more on the plastic side, they're very light. So this headband is very comfortable. So I could wear it all day. And as for the ear pads, the clamp actually on these are very light, and it's very comfortable, and I can wear these almost all day as well. And as you can see that the clamp is very light. And if you were to put these on, you can see they could fall off your head though, but I don't mind that. So the comfort is like almost a 10 out of 10 on these. Well, the other headphones, it's really bad for comfort. So let's go ahead and just talk about the audio quality now. I am going to also be comparing them to the Sennheiser HD598s and these Koss KSC75s, which these can go for about $15. And then both of these Phillips headphones go for about $50. And if you get like Sennheiser 558s, those you can probably find on eBay for like 50, 60 bucks. So let's go ahead and talk about the audio quality now. Now the other headphones, the M1s, MK2s, the ones I just put over here, they have the most bass. And they actually, on the box, say they actually go all the way down to 6 Hertz. So they have, when you listen to music or games, they have strong bass, and it has quite a bit of not only boom, but also they're probably the only headphones where you're gonna actually hear rumble in the bass, like rumble. So they kind of sound good for maybe watching movies, and for music, you know, if you like bass, you might like those. Now, compared to the Sennheisers, they have quite a bit of bass. I'd say they're a little less strong, but they have a good amount of bass, and they're nice and warm. Well, these, I'll say, they do have some bass, but I would say that they're kind of light in the bass department. And then the Koss are even lighter in the bass. They almost have they have enough to be satisfied with, but they are a bit lighter. So let's go ahead and talk about the mids. Now the M1MKIIs, and I'm also going to talk about the highs on those at the same time. The M1MKIIs, they sound a bit muddy sounding, or not really muddy. The bass doesn't really muddy it. Well, actually, it kind of does when I get to a certain point, but it does sound a bit muffled sounding, and there's a little bit less detail, and the highs sound a little softer on the M1MKIIs, and on the M1K2s, a little less clear, you know, muffled, and just a bit softer sounding. Now compared to these have slightly sharper highs, and during certain, like when playing video games and you're shooting guns, certain sound effects will make my ear canal sting a little bit. Like I do get like a sharp stinging pain in my ear, so these can be a little sharp, and that's basically their worst downside, is that they could be just a tad bit sharp sounding. But the highs are very detailed, and the vocals are a little more detailed and a little more clear. Now I will say the Koss, the vocals will sound a little closer to your ear. Well, this one will sound a little, backs it off just a tiny bit. So it's not as close sounding, the vocals, but the vocals are still pretty good on this. Now let's go ahead and talk about this versus the Koss. Well, actually, before we get to that, let's talk about the soundstage and the imaging. Now, the M1MKIIs, they have a decent amount of soundstage, but these have a better soundstage. So I can hear like birds in the background a little farther away. And they have slightly better imaging and definitely better separation. Definitely better separation compared to the M1s. Because those sound a bit muffled and just a little claustrophobic in each sound that's going off on each side. So the separation on the M1MKIIs aren't that great. Well, these have definitely better separation. So would I recommend the M1MKIIs? No, I don't really recommend them. If you want bass, well, I'm going to give you three options. You can get the Sennheiser 558s, the HD 558s, or you can get these or the costs. And I'll show you how you can, get better bass on these. So if you have something like if you're at your computer and it has a bass boost in the Windows settings, or if you're using something like a software like a foobar and you put bass boost on, then these will have probably just as good bass or maybe even better bass because it's cleaner sounding than those M1MKIIs. So, and then the cost will be the same thing, but it's just going to sound a little weaker than these SHP9500s with the bass boost on. And let's say if you're moving around portably, then if you buy an amp like the Fidelio Q1 Mark II that has a bass boost on it, and for really bass light headphones, the bass boost on that basically makes these headphones sound really, really good. So if you turn the bass boost on that amp stack, you'll then have a very good bass for this, and same thing for this. So let's go back to the thing. So back to the M1MKIIs, I don't recommend them. Now, so if you wanted bass, you can get those Sennheisers. Now let's just say you compare the Sennheisers to these SHP9500s. I think these are better for gaming. They have better soundstage and separation, and they sound a bit clearer. The Sennheisers will sound with the bass, it will sound a bit muddy. See, when you put the bass boost on this, it's strong, but it's not overpowering or muddy. The Sennheisers, if you put the bass boost on the Sennheisers, they're going to sound even more muddy than with it off. And with it off, they do they sound less clear and more muddy sounding. But they're good sounding headphones. I would recommend the Sennheisers over the M1MKIIs. But if you do want bass, you're just gonna have to. I would recommend these or the costs, and you just put the bass boost on if you want bass. And if you don't want the bass, then these are pretty much perfect for anybody who wants a cheap headphone that sounds really, really good. Now, you were probably wondering that these costs are a little bit cheaper. These are $15, and then these are $50. Which one do you get? Now these will sound a little clearer, a little more detail, a bit better separation, a little more soundstage, just a little bit of everything, just a little tiny bit better sounding. So these still sound really, really good. It's just these sound just a little bit better, and the bass is even a little bit better. So when you put that bass boost on, it's going to sound even better with the bass boost on. Now both of these are very comfortable, and that's another reason why I recommend the Sennheiser over those M1MKIIs, is because those are also very comfortable, and I can wear those all day. So this is $15 and this is $50. Now why would you might want to get this for $50? Well, actually that's another thing I wanted to mention, but we'll get to that. These are probably going to be less likely to break. These, every time I pick them up, I want to make sure I don't squish on this thing here, because you could possibly snap that. And this cost has been known for because it doesn't come with detachable cables. And people have complained about the tugging on the cable has broken their pair. So if you want something that might last you a little bit longer, then I would recommend these Phillips SHP9500. But the main thing about these costs, though, is they're even more portable than those M1MKIIs. So these are extremely portable. You just got to make sure they don't get squished if you put it in like a book bag or something, or in your pocket. You know, make sure you don't put them in your back pocket. Obviously, you don't sit on them. Obviously. So you just have to be a little careful with those, and they are more portable. So if you're looking for something like to jog in, I definitely recommend those. But if you want something for home use at your desktop and something that'll last you a bit longer, then I'd recommend these Phillips for a little bit more money. So let's go ahead and get back to what I was talking about before. These M1MKIIs, since they're only 16 ohms, I tried to put them on my receiver and they would not, no audio would really come out of them. And then I also tried to put a tube amp on them, because just today I got my little dot MK2 for testing, and these will not work on a tube amp at all for some reason. It might have to do with something, the fact that they're only 16 ohms. Now I can open up that little dot and change the impedance switches on it, but overall it does not work on a tube amp, and it does not work on a receiver. Now these SHP9500s do work on a tube amp, and I will say they react better than the cost by quite a bit to a tube amp. And the main thing I noticed with like the little dot with the stock tubes, which is what I'm using so far, it's kind of like using the Fidelio but with the bass boost on. So with the little dot, it actually adds a bit of bass, and it just makes it sound really good. And that's another thing about the M1MKII. Off of the computer motherboard, it has something called bass reflux, and it doesn't quite sound like it's getting enough power. So if you hook this up to the Fidelio or like a shit amp, it just needs a little bit more power for that bass feature to work, to get that rumble. So that's about all I really want to talk about these 3 headphones. So thank you for watching.